Welcome to our first episode of Martinis with Vesper. This is a fun, casual podcast about fashion and the industry. I am so honored to be hosting this great podcast and sharing my knowledge and experience with all of you. I do want to make it clear, though, that everyone's experience in the fashion industry is different and may have a completely different take on the same topic. With that being said, this podcast will bring you into my experience as an educator, a runway designer, and doing it all as a single mom. This podcast will be aired randomly with a new episode talking about the important industry topics and sometimes tackling the latest headlines. So please be patient with the launch of this podcast, as we are an emerging podcast with limited resources, unlike some of the more established podcasts with investor backing. In this episode, I will answer just a few questions, but some might be explored in more detail or exploration in future podcasts. The first question I've been asked is, why this type of podcast? Well, I wanted people to have a look into what the reality is for an emerging designer. And is it really by chance, or does it take the right opportunities and hard work that will bring you to that success? I also wanted people to know that it's not all glitz and glam. It's actually the opposite. The glitz and glam is only for about a week surrounding that specific runway show or event. Next, I was asked, why this type of platform to bring it to the public? I chose to bring my voice to a podcast and not a book or a talk because the modern day social trends are leading to a platform like this. Nowadays, this generation is either listening to a podcast or searching a YouTube video. They're not really reading a book, unless it's one of those spicy little TikTok books. I will also bring to light some controversial topics that major design companies are less likely to talk about, such as copycats and appropriation of cultures. This industry has a glamorous side that the average person sees and idolizes, but most will never talk about the dark side of the industry. The dark side could include substance abuse, body shaming, sabotage to competing designers. The important lesson is to separate yourself from the professional side and your personal side. This industry can eat you alive if you are not careful. The way that you conduct yourself in the industry is a good indicator of how you are perceived and how many opportunities a designer may receive. I also noticed that there is still a hierarchy in the industry, and it can be the gender of a designer or even the race or culture of the designer. I have experienced it all and never really let it stop me from pursuing my passion. So let's ask this question. Can anyone be a fashion designer and show on the runway? Well, this is a bit of a complex question, as it's not a cut and dry yes or no answer. Not every collection needs to be on the runway, and not every collection that is on the runway is to be worn as everyday clothing. What needs to be sorted out first is, what is your niche as a fashion designer, and who is your target audience? Being labeled as a fashion designer can be interpreted differently. For the most part, if you have been formally trained at an accredited post-secondary institution or by a fashion house and later work for a major apparel company, you earn that right to call yourself a fashion designer. There are exceptions as well. There have been some emerging designers who who have no formal training and later on become super successful runway designers. Innovation and talent is another key component to this equation. Not everyone has it or will ever truly make it in the industry and wonder why they're doing the same things as others and not making it. However, timing is also another factor that may take one person a few years, but then others, it may only take them a few months to excel to their success. I will explore this question a bit further in a later podcast, as there are so many elements that need to be expanded upon. Are influencers expert in the industry? The short answer is absolutely not. They are important, though, to the media aspect of getting the latest collection noticed by the public. They will reach an audience that may be missed, such as a niche influence or a different age group. For the most part, influencers are usually only involved in the glitz and glam portion of the industry and do not get to see what happens the rest of the time leading up to a runway show or event. So it is hard for them to really be an expert of the reality of the industry. Is every collection that is on the runway good? This is a bit of a subjective question. One person may think it's innovative and unique, and another may hate it and think it's terrible with no innovation or talent to it. A designer will also need to find out where their collection fits best and will inspire their audience. For example, if you are a swimsuit designer, your collection would most likely do best in a show hosted in Miami or Los Angeles. But if it's shown in a colder climate, it may be a hit and miss, depending on the season of the collection is shown. This is why some designers will only be part of certain runways in certain cities. Do designers want celebrities to wear their collection? Well, the short answer is absolutely yes. The publicity that comes with a celebrity wearing something from your collection is paramount. However, a designer will want a celebrity who matches their aesthetic and views and may not want somebody who will cause too much controversy and a media nightmare to the brand. This is a marketing tactic that works beautifully. The designer will have the exposure of that celebrity wearing that garment and have the media asking, who are they wearing? They will be in pictures and social media posts that will be seen for far more than the time the collection is released. It is a win-win situation if done correctly. Is real fur a fashion no? Or is it still okay to use? Again, this is a subjective question. My personal opinion is that big fashion companies shouldn't, as designs are for profit with no cultural significance. This is where faux fur should be used to get the simulated look. The flip side of this is when an emerging designer who has a cultural connection and uses ethical harvesting techniques. The indigenous people will use fur in their designs as they have for centuries and will continue to use them. This is when using real fur should be socially accepted. Now, for the average person seeing fur in a collection may not know or understand a cultural connection and might be turned off. The best thing in this situation is to do a bit of research before speaking up about the use of real fur. This is where the media can either help or destroy a collection if not properly researched. Do you recommend a young student who loves fashion to get a degree in fashion design? Or is it even needed to become a fashion designer? This is a bit of a loaded question and is personalized and situational to that specific person. The short answer to this question is no. You do not need to get a degree to become a fashion designer. However, many of the instructors who teach these post-secondary schools are designers who are active in the industry and can give you the leg up to starting your career. It really depends on the type of designer you really want to be. If you want to be a designer who works for a major company such as Lululemon or Arc'teryx, then yes, absolutely get your degree, as many of these instructors work for those companies or have close connections with the companies. If you want to be a runway designer, then the loose answer is no. But I highly recommend going through a post-secondary program, as there will still be opportunities that could open up to you. Should a designer use their name or have a brand name? This is a personal choice depending on if the designer is the main designer or is collaborating with other designers. If a designer uses their name as a brand name, then it usually is safe to say that they are the only or they're the main designer. If a designer uses a brand name or a catch name, then they usually don't want their name to be the main focus, or they want their brand to have a catchy name. This could also be a reason when there are more than one designer at the helm. A designer will also use a name. A designer will also name their brand based on their aesthetic of their collections they will produce. So choosing a brand name is very important. A designer should take a moment and imagine their brand name on a billboard or on a hanging tag to see if it works. Another thing that is important is the element of a brand logo. Everyone will see this logo, and you must ask yourself, is it distinctive enough, or will it be remembered if a client sees it? The fashion industry moves at a very fast pace and comes with a lot of criticism and judgment. It is not for the weak at heart, but for the passionate and driven ones who love to create and show their creativity to the world. It is a hard-working industry and will include everyone from the production team to the models, to the organizers, to the investors, and most importantly, the designers. Everyone in this circle has an equally important job and should be treated that way. Some designers forget about that key element and let their egos get in the way. This will eventually limit their opportunities to work with certain production teams in the future. Thank you to everyone who took the time to join me in this inaugural episode of Martinis with Vesper. It is my pleasure to share with you some of my experiences and opinions of the fashion industry. So stay tuned for our next episode. Drink those martinis, put on those heels, and keep looking fabulous.